I have given a few talks now, and much to my own surprise, they've all been sort of on a similar theme, and all to do with presenting various Buddhist sutras, but in the context of just sort of widening and deepening the way we approach theosophical literature. And because my mum is a theosophist, I've been interacting with theosophical literature for a while, but when I got this opportunity to study at the university, it filled some gaps for me, which I'm really, really grateful for. And in particular, something which had always felt like a gap for me was in The Voice of the Silence, in the introduction, HPB is said to both be Buddhist to her fingertips and not a Buddhist at all. So it's a little bit paradoxical, but when I did a little bit more research into it, it seems like on the one hand she thoroughly rejects all doctrine, all religious doctrine as such, as being much too narrow for her to express the ancient wisdom through. But on the other hand, there's this acknowledgement that Buddhism, but Mahayana Buddhism in particular, comes closest to theosophical principles. And I didn't really know that much about what the particular Mahayana innovations were. So it was really good learning about that, and I talked at last year's convention about skillful means, which is one of the really Mahayana innovations that they brought in, which is about not being right or wrong, but looking at everything as a skillful means, and looking at everything as a targeted message to a particular audience. So what is the message for me out of this particular statement? Along with that, and Barbara really went into that last year, the Bodhisattva vow, which we'll have a look at in a minute, very, very particular to Mahayana Buddhism, about letting go of attachment even to the idea of enlightenment itself, and making the journey instead about service. And that's just such a different approach, isn't it? Where you're not actually striving, you're sharing. And you're very much looking at yourself in the context of community. So I've done a few of these talks, but then last year I had the privilege of being introduced to Suzanne and to Suzanne's art. And the moment I saw Suzanne's art, I sort of went, oh, that says it all. Actually, you just need to sit with the painting because it says it all. It says it far more eloquently than I could ever say it. And we sort of got this idea of combining a talk with the paintings. And so we did that at the immersion weekend, and we felt that there was another one in there, didn't we, Suzanne? We thought we could give it another try. So, My Body, My Earth, number 1, and My Body, My Earth, number 2. I'm going to go into a very small little introduction about the heart as the crucible and what it means, what crucible means, and then I'll go first into an explanation of the paintings, and then we'll have a look at the Heart Sutra, but the particular translation by Thich Nhat Hanh, a very dear friend, although I never heard him in person. And there won't be anything in this talk that you don't already know. But what I'm hoping for is just to really, really focus on our experience in the body. So I'm hoping to just widen and deepen the context that we already know in an embodied way. And if that happens even a little bit, I'll be really, really happy. So crucible. What's a crucible? The heart is a crucible. A ceramic or metal container in which metals or other substances may be melted under high temperature. But of course, more specifically, number 2, a situation of severe trial, or in which different elements interact, leading to the creation of something new. And that fits in so well with Richard's talk.
this morning, and with Jude Caravan's talk, and with Shona's talk, and I love the way in which synchronicity always seems to happen at these conventions where we don't plan our talks together, but somehow they all seem to work out really well together. So that's great. So what is the essence of heart-centeredness, and why is it important? Well, the identification of the human heart, as Murray already said in the introduction, it seems to be universally associated with compassion. Compassion, to suffer together. Don't like that particularly as a definition, but defined as the feeling that arises when you're confronted with another's suffering and feel motivated to relieve that suffering. So, compassion and heart-centeredness, you can't really separate one from the other. So that brings me to these two wonderful paintings. This is number one. And I'm just going to read it out if that's okay. And after my talk, I'm going to invite Suzanne to just speak a little bit as well. My body, my earth one, appears as the tree of life, infused with human form, thrusting from the earth, or the ground of being, alive with vibrant force. The elements of earth and air and fire and water pulsate together in chaotic, intentful harmony. The profusion of green-like foliage cascading around the head of the figure suggests wing-like fields of substance. The work speaks of we humans as integral aspects of a unified energetic force, interrelated, symbiotic, interdependent. Essentially, we are energy, vibration, sound, and ideation from spirit, seeking to express theirself within myriad forms of life. As monads within the one life, we are called to be conscious, active contributors to the overall well-being and flourishment of Mother Earth, I love that word, and her creatures, to act as instruments of articulation to the defined purpose of the Divine Father, and to be guardians of their creations. It's a quote there from Esoteric Astrology. It's all manifested deity. It is all divine expression and all a form of sensitive awareness and of response to environment, and therefore a form of conscious expression. And I know I'm standing here talking, and I know that there's going to be a slideshow, but I really do invite you to really just sit with these two paintings. It's after lunch. We have had a little bit of movement, but you know, it's an inward time. So don't feel obliged to look at me. Please feel obliged to just sit with these. I can't even really call them paintings, because there's a living elemental life that's in the room with these artworks. And I invite you to just gently interact with it as I speak away. So we're going to go to My Body, My Earth 2, which is right beside me here. Continues the themes of My Body, My Earth 1. This work depicts the intense matrix of interconnected energies and components found deep within living systems. The figure to the top left-hand corner presents a Devic form, a reference to Prashna Paramita Devi, perfection of wisdom goddess, or Tara, an embodiment of and one of the multiple faces of the divine dimension of God, the Great Mother. She presides over the manifestation of life. In the lower plane of the work swirls the bloodlines. I had quite a reaction to that part of the painting, extending to and from the beating rhythmic heart. The intense maze of swirling matter to the upper right-hand frame seeks birthing, seeks form through which to articulate the intention of spirit.
The image is alive with energy and constant movement, layers and layers interpenetrating and interconnected. No thing is still, but is in constant motion, constant pulsation. Matter and spirit interlace, their meeting, initiating, sustaining, and burgeoning life through the sacred bloods. And I really want you to keep that writing in mind, that description in mind, as we go through the presentation. This is a quote from The Secret Doctrine. Matter is the vehicle for the manifestation of soul in this plane of existence, and soul is the vehicle on a higher plane for the manifestation of spirit, and these three are a trinity synthesized by life which pervades them all. It's a marvelous quote. Okay. Now, the interesting thing about the voice of the silence is that William Kingsland, in The Real H.B. Blavatsky, makes this quite unusual statement of the voice of the silence being the only true exposition in English of the heart doctrine of Mahayana Buddhism. The text isn't at all alike. They're two completely separate texts. But I think by the end you'll see that there's a very valid reason for that statement. So just to recap, for those of you who don't specifically know about the Bodhisattva vow, I think most of you do, it is a vow to keep returning and returning and returning lifetime after lifetime, not seeking one's own enlightenment, but seeking to help others reach theirs. So then in a way, there's no soul left out. You know, we're all in it together, and we come back until we can all go to the light. There's different versions. I've seen about 5 or 6 versions, but I just selected these two. The unrescued I will rescue. The unliberated I will liberate. The uncomforted I will comfort. Those who have not yet reached Paranirvana, I will cause to attain Paranirvana. Or this one here, to cause those who have not yet understood to understand. To cause those who have not settled themselves to be settled, to cause those who have not attained nirvana to attain nirvana. The way I approached theosophy really changed when I really connected with that vow. It makes your study, it gives it a different quality, because everything you're doing to learn in order to be of service. This is a statement, a definition by Chogyam Trungpa, who I believe Barbara, I don't know if is Barbara here? Yeah, Barbara knows a bit about him, don't you, Barbara? The Bodhisattva vow is the commitment to put others before oneself. It is a statement of willingness to give up one's own well-being, even one's own enlightenment, for the sake of others. And a bodhisattva is simply a person who lives in the spirit of that vow, perfecting the qualities known as the 6 paramitas, perfections: generosity, discipline, patience, exertion, meditation, and transcendental knowledge in his effort to liberate beings. Taking the Bodhisattva vow implies that instead of holding our own individual territory and defending it tooth and nail, we become open to the world that we are living in. It's a beautiful statement. Now, this is Thich Nhat Hanh. So I chose Thich Nhat Hanh's translation of the Heart Sutra because it's a more modern translation, and it adds something that the others don't have. So it's easily purchasable. You can just get it through Fish Pond, California, Palm Leaves Press, this particular edition. So this sutra, also known as the Prajna Paramita Heart Sutra, which sort of connects with Suzanne's description of My Body, My Earth too. Is chanted or recited daily in both monastic and lay communities around the world. So prajna means insight or understanding, and paramita means going or gone to the other shore. So the insight that brings us to the other shore. And the other shore, really, we're talking about enlightenment. We're also talking about moving from duality into oneness. Now what you'll notice is that it's a very short sutra. It's not very long at all, but the person who is speaking is not the Buddha. It's Avalokiteshvara, who's the Bodhisattva of compassion, also known as the regarder of the cries of the world. This is the Bodhisattva that is predominant in Tibetan Buddhism as well. I've got a little story here before we go into the sutra itself, because the sutra, it's paradoxical, and this explanation will stop you from going down into that paradox. So the novice monk in his nose. The Zen master asked the novice monk, "Tell me about your understanding of the Heart Sutra." The novice joined his palms and replied, "I have understood that all of the skandhas are empty. There are no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body and no mind. There are no forms, no sounds, no smells, no taste, no touch, and no objects of mind." This is what the sutra says. The 18 realms of phenomena do not exist. The 12 links of interdependent arising do not exist, and insight and attainment also do not exist. So the monk says, "Do you believe this?" "Yes," says the novice, "I truly believe this." "Come closer," the Zen master instructed the novice monk, and as the novice monk drew near, the Zen master reached out, grabbed his nose and twisted it hard, and in great pain the novice cried out, "Master, you're hurting me!" And the Zen master raised his eyebrows questioningly and said, "But you just said that the nose doesn't exist. So if there is no nose, what is hurting?" Keep that in mind. So this is the Heart Sutra. It's not very long. I'm just going to read it out, and then we'll go more deeply into it. Avalokiteshvara, while practicing deeply with the insight that brings us to the other shore, suddenly discovered that all of the 5 skandhas are equally empty, and with this realization he overcame all ill-being. "Listen, Sariputra, this body itself is emptiness, and emptiness itself is this body. This body is not other than emptiness, and emptiness is not other than this body. And the same is true of feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Listen, Sariputra, all phenomena bear the mark of emptiness. Their true nature is the nature of no birth, no death, no being, no non-being, no defilement, no purity, no increasing, no decreasing. That is why in emptiness, body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness are not separate self-entities. The 18 realms of phenomena, which are the 6 sense organs, and the 6 consciousnesses, are also not separate self-entities. The 12 links of interdependent arising and their extinction are also not separate self-entities. Ill-being, the causes of ill-being, the end of ill-being, the path, insight and attainment are also not separate self-entities. Whoever can see this no longer needs anything to attain. Bodhisattvas who practice the insight that brings us to the other shore see no more obstacles in their mind, and because there are no more obstacles in their mind, they can overcome all fear, destroy all wrong perceptions, and realize perfect nirvana. I think we're quite familiar with these ideas of overcoming the senses, overcoming desire, overcoming the mind, overcoming emotion. But I believe there's been a slightly wrong focus in here, and so does Thich Nhat Hanh, luckily, because I really like it. So I'm glad we've got the same ideas. All Buddhas in the past, present and future, by practicing the insight that brings us to the other shore, are all capable of attaining authentic and perfect enlightenment. Therefore, Sariputra, it should be known that the insight that brings us to the other shore is a great mantra, the most illuminating mantra, the highest mantra, a mantra beyond compare, the true wisdom that has the power to put an end to all kinds of suffering. Therefore, let us proclaim a mantra to praise the insight that brings us to the other shore. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. So, empty of what? You know, if something has to be empty, then what is it empty of? You know, you could say that a glass is full of water and then you pour the water out, so it's then empty of water, but then it has air in it. So empty of what? What is this sutra actually talking about? It sounds in a way like it's talking about just the illusion of all matter, and that's certainly how we've taken it. He talks about the emptiness of the five skandhas, which are the components that make up our individual self or our sense of self. Form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. I think most people here would be familiar with the five skandhas. But if you look at what Avalokiteshvara actually means, it means the master of looking deeply. And the master of looking deeply understands that the five skandhas which make up our identity are empty of a separate self, and therefore the master becomes aware of the interbeing of all things, and as a result he becomes all compassionate and gains liberation and reaches the other shore. So here's this paradox of this sutra that's chanted all over the world by many, many, many Buddhists to help them reach enlightenment. And it's really hard to grasp the meaning of it, but the meaning actually is very, very simple. All of these things which make up our being, they don't have a separate self, and nor do we truly have a separate self. We are all part of a oneness. And of course the oneness is what Theosophy talks about as an underpinning. How does emptiness relate to compassion and heart-centeredness? Bodhisattva of great compassion, Avalokiteshvara. Avalokita means looking deeply, Ishvara is the master, Bodhi is being awake, Sattva is a living being. So the awake being who's a master of looking deeply. So what is it about looking deeply that triggers compassion? Okay. Really like this statement. So if you're looking at a piece of paper, according to Thich Nhat Hanh, you should be able to see a cloud. Why should you be able to see a cloud? Because without clouds, there will be no rain. Without rain, there will be no trees. Without trees, there will be no paper. Everything is interconnected. This is what the Heart Sutra is saying. You know, this sutra doesn't mention the heart once. It's called the Heart Sutra. It doesn't mention it once. It talks about emptiness, and it talks about skandhas and form and everything being an illusion. But is it an illusion? No, that's not what the sutra is actually saying. It's saying none of it has a separate existence. Everything is connected. This is the idea of interbeing, which is very close to what Shona was talking about, but also very close to what Jude was talking about as well. Everything is connected. Interbeing is a word that's not in the dictionary yet, but Thich Nhat Hanh thought it was a word that should exist. The prefix inter and the verb to be. Interbe. That's us. We are interbeing. That's what the Heart Sutra is talking about. Interbeing. So we're also in the paper. Someone hold up a piece of paper. We're in that paper. That's us. Because it's becoming more and more clear to neuroscientists, and Jude spoke about this, that we cannot exactly speak of an objective world outside of our perception, but nor can we speak of a wholly, we can't exactly speak of a wholly objective world outside of our perception, nor can we speak of a wholly subjective world in which things only exist in our mind, as the Zen master made clear with the twisting of the novice's nose. Everything, time, space, the earth, the rain, the minerals in the soil, the sunshine, the cloud, the river, the heat, even consciousness is in that sheet of paper. Everything coexists with it. To be is to interbe. You cannot just be yourself alone. You have to interbe with every other thing. This is what Jude was saying as well. So, why is that realization what we need for compassion? Well, because it's that realization that there is really no us and them. Which is not to say that we are not uniquely individual, but because we are. I'm not trying to contradict Shona in any way. It's very, very important to recognize our individual uniqueness, but at the same time, we've got to hold both concepts at the same time. We're a unique individual expression of a global oneness. And it's not just a oneness with everyone else from our group, or our gender, or our race, or our country, or our species. It's with all life. We're all made up of the same matter. We're all made up of atoms. The Heart Sutra doesn't talk about atoms, but the Heart Sutra was written from a knowledge that that is the truth of how it is. Everything is connected intimately. And this is what these paintings represent. As soon as I stand in front of these paintings, I can see that. What I want to really talk about, though, is the experience of that interbeing coming through the body. Because we do leave the poor old body out somewhat. We're all so keen, really, to transcend our bodies, and return to some sort of point of origin in a heavenly realm. And again, we talk about, we have to overcome our physical desires, our physical appetites, our more selfish tendencies. All of that is true. But everything that we experience, whether it's a thought or a feeling or a physical sensation, it's all experienced in the body. And the absolute magic of the body is that it reflects what is going on at a soul level, at the level of the mind, and at the level of the emotions instantaneously. You can think of something negative, and within a split second, you will have the experience of it in your body. And yet, millions of atoms have to rearrange themselves in this magical process to give you that experience. And so, last time, and you will see upstairs in the art exhibition, there is a very large work by Suzanne called The Descent of God. And so I present for pondering the concept that yes, we try and rise up to spirit, but you can also say that actually we're trying to draw spirit down into form. And Jude was talking about the importance of worldview. There's an interesting, you find stories of the fall of man in most sort of worldviews, world concepts, but Theosophy it talks about it a little bit differently. HPB talks about the fact that not so much there was a fall, but that there was a reluctance to come into form, and that form was left too long without the indwelling spirit and that has actually made it somewhat harder for us to coalesce spirit and form. I'm not vouching as to the truth of that, but I find that a really, really interesting concept, and it's a concept I've pondered on a lot. What are we deeply looking at and through to achieve the experience of interbeing? Well, I'm going to go back to the voice of the silence. I'm going to let our beloved Helena Blavatsky tell us. In order to become the knower of all self, thou hast first of self to be the knower. To gain that knowledge, thou hast to give up self to non-self and being to non-being. Now again, that's not giving up your individuality, but it's giving up your attachment to individuality and your resistance to being part of the larger whole. Shun ignorance, and likewise shun illusion. Now this is really interesting. Avert thy face from world deception, mistrust thy senses for they are false. And then in the next line she says, but within thy body, the shrine of thy sensation, seek in the impersonal for the eternal man. And this is what I really, really, if you just take away one thing, there are levels of wisdom in the body that we don't often access. We try and access them out there, whereas actually they can be accessed in the body because every atom is part of the same creation. They're all fractals, aren't they, Jude? So it's like being a tree and really sending roots down deep. You know, if you want to be a tree and you want to reach up to the heavens, but you want to survive the storms, you need deep roots. You need to be able to send your roots down deep. You need to be able to get all of the nutrients from the soil that you can possibly get. And I can see, to me, I don't know if everyone can feel it, but to me this is saying that and so much more eloquently than I can say. You know, picture says 1,000 words. To me, that's what this painting is saying. That's what this painting, and actually it's what all the paintings say. But these two really telling us how much we are interconnected. This is from the voice of the silence as well. So kindly acts, and thou shalt reap their fruition. Inaction in a deed of mercy becomes an action in a deadly sin. Thus saith the sage. So not only are we to go deeply within, but we're to act physically as well. You know, we're to actually take action. Shalt thou abstain from action? Not so shall thy soul gain her freedom. To reach nirvana, one must reach self-knowledge, and self-knowledge is of loving deeds the child. So here are some ways that we can contemplate the body in the body. The whole universe has come together to form my body. We didn't arrange this, did we, Jude? We didn't actually meet till, what was it, Wednesday? The body has been there for a long time, for millions of years. It is the continuation of many generations. It has never died. I cannot take this body lightly. It is not mine alone. I cannot underestimate this body. It is the body of all my ancestors. This is why I love using these sutras. You know, they're really old. You know, they may seem a bit outdated, but this is the voice that reverberates through the ages. People knew this way back then, and it's the same message. And those people are in us, not just through their words, that's one way, through their consciousness, but the physical bodies. You know, the dinosaurs, all of it is in us. Because nothing disappears, you know, an atom doesn't magically disappear, it goes to make up a different form. I'm personally, with my very limited knowledge of physics, I can take it as far as the atom and maybe electrons and protons and neutrons, that's about it. I can't take it any further than that, but they are the building blocks of the universe. And I also think that, you know, within this real understanding of all of us being one, this is a way to communicate with people who may not understand reincarnation, or they may not want to speak in spiritual ways. But if you talk about this, if you talk about the way in which all building blocks are recycled into different form over and over and over again, and if you talk about reincarnation in terms of the bloodlines and the concepts and the teaching that comes via bloodlines, both good and bad, you know, stucknesses run in bloodlines as well, but just this idea of this continuation, you know, you don't have to have a particular religion to really get on board with that. And I think that's the new paradigm, that's the new teaching that we need to reach out with across these politicized divides, because everyone's either been politicized and everything has either been politicized or it's been monetized, you know, wellness even, you know, spirituality even. It's like, you know, it all belongs in a category and a box. Right, this is a way of taking people beyond boxes. That's not actually challenging. You can talk to people about this, and you don't have to get to any of the divisions. Ludwig Wittgenstein, the human body is the best picture of the human soul. Just wanted to go a little bit into William Meader. And the way he explains, you know, the different levels of human being. And he talks about, I mean, we're familiar with them from theosophy, you know, you've got the physical body, the emotional body, in terms of, you know, vibration, the mental body, then you go into the higher realms of being. And William has always said that alternate layers reflect each other. So the physical body and the mental body are particularly aligned. But the soul body consciousness actually sits on the higher mental plane. The monad, our highest self, sits much higher up on the Buddhic planes. But the soul body consciousness, which is what we work with really in any given lifetime, is very, very closely reflected in the physical body. Okay. Just to prove that this idea is truly universal, this is an academic article that I was given to read in one of my papers at university. So actually it was a paper called The Body in Asian Religions. Wonderful, wonderful lecturer, Lena Vergerie, who previously a Harvard educated. She was over in Canada. It was lockdown, but she was teaching the University of Otago course by distance in Canada. I mean, how marvelous is that? But so this article, just an academic article, this is not a spiritual person. She is talking about microbiome, the way, you know, it's not just that we're all made up of the same building blocks, but we're not even, you know, we think we're human, but, you know, we're all bacteria and all these other microbes. They live everywhere, like in our skin and our eyebrows. It's quite a creepy idea when you first, you know, get to know about it, but we really are a universe unto ourselves. There's all these tiny living beings, and you can see the title of the article is "It's Chomping All the Way Down." You know, all these bacteria. But what she says is we've got this idea that we are this neat, tidy package. This is my body, you know, there's the world, here is my body. And she says, well, actually we're more of a donut, because there's an open space called the alimentary canal that goes from the mouth through to the other end. And actually it's empty space, so right at the core of us actually is the outside world. And we're constantly taking it in, digesting it, and making compost for our roses. On the donut model, at the literal bodily centre of us, we find not some solid essential core, but the rest of the world. The presence of that hole through our middle, the alimentary canal, means that at every moment the world moves through us. I love that. It was quite I have to say, I went through quite a process when I read this article, because you see your identity in a very particular way. This is my body, you know, there's a personal space that I like to have around me, there's everyone else. And this idea that right within me is the entire world was quite eye-opening for me. Therefore, our bodies are our earth. So that's the end of the presentation. And I really wanted to invite Suzanne. I wanted you to have enough time to say what you want to say. And then we'll do questions if anyone, or comments that anyone has. Would you like to speak, Suzanne?
So I just wanted to say something about creativity, which has been with me since the morning's talks. And that is that my understanding, I've worked in the creative process all my life and run major retreats and intensives in creativity-centred human development and many other things. But what's at the core of creative process is the soul, is the presence of the soul. They're inseparable. You can't awaken to creative life if you're not connected into that place deep within yourself where that divinity lies. And so, of course, that's everyone's journey. Every single human being's journey is about taking those steps towards discovering who they really are on that level of soul. And the nature of the soul, the desire of the soul, is to totally articulate and express the experience of cosmos, of life. And so the creative journey is really about your soul journey, and it's about the monadic life revealing itself within your being. And these works are they're very intuitive. They're not something, I don't get an idea that I'm going to do a painting about this. I begin and it emerges, and it's an intense commitment to the ashramic life that I'm connected with, and the being of spirit that comes through, which is completely about the interpenetration of all life. There's no separation, and I think that's what has been so much coming forward out of people. And they really take me on a journey, believe me. You know, they're a total commitment and involvement, and you know, you're also faced with the actual technical challenge of a two-dimensional form and creating imagery that has a soul depth. You know, you look around the back of the canvas, you've just got the back of the canvas. And so somehow I'm seeking, as an artist, I'm always seeking to find the spirit of things. I'm interested in the energy. I'm not interested so much in the form, but I'm interested in the energy that is within the form, that holds the form, that informs all life. And I do everything I can to try and be an instrument for that expression to flow through, and for that energy to become alive in the canvas. They're invocational. People will, can and do have quite major reactions to them that can trigger healing or other levels of experience. But And the other thing is, normally once I start them, within moments the title appears. So the titles are actually very important because they're like a key to the content of the work. And as the painting nears the end, they actually start to sing. I hear the song of the work. And it's just like hearing the music. It's very special. I think that's all I've got to say.